Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. The contract slid away mid-signature and my pen scratched air. HR's hand pinned the folder shut like a trap. My manager watched the hallway instead of my face. "Hold on," I said, voice steady and not friendly. No one breathed, which told me there was risk. I'm Sarah Novick, 31, and I had earned this role. My pulse kicked, but my posture stayed still. The room felt crowded by things unsaid. "I'm finishing that signature," I said. The folder didn't move, which sharpened everything. "Leadership wants a pause," HR murmured without blinking. "A pause from what?" I asked, keeping my jaw relaxed. My manager adjusted his cuff and checked his phone. "We need the right optics for clients," he added. The word optics pressed on my ribs like a weight. "What changed since 9 a.m.? I asked, eyes on him. "Direction," he said, almost cheerful and a little brittle. I let the silence stretch until he swallowed. "Who decided that?" I asked, opening my notebook. His mouth tugged left, which meant trouble was coming. "Let's not escalate," HR offered, palms open and careful. "We're considering team balance and external stability." "My numbers are stability," I said, tapping last quarter. He glanced at the printed chart, then glanced away. The chart didn't seem to matter, which burned. The elevator doors opened, and he followed at my heels. "Don't make this messy," his voice low and smooth. "Messy already happened," I said, thumb near my phone. He stepped closer and sniffed for weakness like heat. I smiled once, which isn't kindness, it's warning. At my desk, the promotion invite vanished from calendar. Permissions changed, and my budget pane grayed out. I tried reload 3 times, then stopped. This wasn't a glitch, and we all knew it. I opened a fresh document and started a log. He pinged me for a quick chat, no agenda. We took the small glass room near the kitchen. "Clients respond to a certain presence," he began. I watched his reflection rather than his eyes. The recorder on my phone glowed quietly under notes. "A firm look helps in high stakes," he continued. "Like a dad energy," he added with a shrug. My knuckles whitened around the pen as I listened. "You're valuable but not front-facing right now." There it was, soft words carrying a hard edge. "Put that in writing," I said, closing the notebook. His smile lifted without reaching anywhere true. "Let's workshop your development plan instead," he offered. I rose and opened the door with a click. His shoulders squared, which meant he heard the boundary. Back at HR, I asked for a written reason. They pushed mentoring sessions and shadow weeks across the table. "Policy reference, please," I said, pen on the line. They shared a link and nothing useful. Their smiles cooled a degree, which meant resistance. My team chat blinked with stiff congratulations to no one. A new channel appeared for a transition I hadn't agreed. Mark an awkward sorry and a screenshot. A leadership thread mentioned visibility and comfort and timing. The words smelled like code, and code means pattern. I saved everything with timestamps and short labels. Clipboard emails, calendar history, all organized for daylight. Each entry had a sentence and a proof. No stories, no fluff, just facts that stand up. I could already feel the next move forming. On my commute home, the city blurred without detail. Anger rode shotgun and fear crouched behind it. I rehearsed questions I would ask tomorrow. I pictured the lines I would not cross. I also pictured the lines they already crossed. Night settled and the house stayed quiet on purpose. I drafted one clean email to myself with attachments. I wrote a subject with the word discrimination in plain letters. My finger hovered, then pressed send and waited. Some part of me clicked into place like a lock. I slept a little, then woke wired before dawn. I reviewed the log and added 2 missing beats. My reflection in the dark window looked steady enough. I was not calm, but I was aimed. Today I would stop accepting pauses and start forcing answers. I walked in early and found my chair occupied. Mark stood up fast and offered an apology I did not accept. "Whose plan is this?" I asked, eyes on the dashboard. Not mine, he whispered, palms open like a shield. I opened my recorder and left it running under my notes. My access flickered again and 2 folders disappeared. I stood, waved it over, and requested an audit. Escalate as security risk, I added, tone even and cold. The tech's eyes widened because that word triggers alarms. We both knew someone would feel that tremor soon. 9:30, all hands, he launched into a neat announcement. Interim coverage for client exposure, smooth words hiding something sharp. Questions, he asked, scanning every corner but mine. I raised a hand and watched his jaw tighten. What policy governs this coverage? I asked, heartbeat steady and loud. He pivoted to performance indicators that didn't exist. I pulled up quarterly outcomes and placed them side by side. The room went very still, then buzzed in short bursts. Mark cleared his throat and looked at the floor. We can review offline, my manager offered with a thin smile. On the record, I answered, and HR shifted in their seats. Cite the standard, I said, pen tapping once for rhythm. Silence spread, then someone coughed to break it. The projector timed out like a curtain dropping. I let the quiet hang until it started to bite. After the meeting, a Slack ping landed from an unknown handle. Check your inbox, the message read, nothing else. An email waited with a forwarded thread and timestamps. Phrases like client comfort and presentable face jumped out hard. I saved it, then saved it again in 3 places. He intercepted me near the elevators and blocked the path. Walk with me, voice pleasant and edged like a blade. We stepped into a side room with glass walls. Your reactions are concerning, he began, smoothing his sleeve once. My documentation concerns you more, I answered, and his smile cracked. Let's map a growth plan, he tried again, softer now. I want the decision makers named in writing. That creates friction, he replied, shoulders squaring against the ask. Friction clarifies, I said, pulse calm and focused. He stared too long, then reached for the door to flee. HR called a check-in and placed water on the table. I didn't touch it because I needed a clear head. I'm requesting a litigation hold on all related data. Their pens stopped moving as if pinned to the page. Please confirm by end of day, I added, unwavering and crisp. Mark found me by the printers with a guilty nod. I got briefed last night without you, he murmured quickly. They want you visible but silent during client calls. Will you confirm that in writing? I asked without blinking. He hesitated, then nodded once like he'd made a decision. It circled back with a short report and a question. 2 deletions came from an admin account, not yours. I asked for the user ID and preservation steps. The tech printed a 1-line summary and avoided my gaze. Someone was digging a deeper hole without realizing the depth. At lunch, my lawyer called while I stood in the corridor. Send the admin log and the thread with comfort language. I attached files and hit send with no hesitation. Next, request meeting notes and a list of approvers. Her voice was steady and mine matched it on purpose. Afternoon, a senior exec did a drive-by with a polished grin. Let's keep momentum positive, he offered with performative warmth. Momentum toward compliance, I answered, not moving an inch. He paused, then checked his watch as if time could save him. You'll hear from us, he added, already backing away. Before close, I submitted a concise complaint through the official portal. Names, dates, quotes, attachments, everything trimmed to what matters. I requested an external investigator and a written timeline. Then I forwarded the receipt to my personal account. I knew the hit would come fast, and I was ready. 5:50, a calendar block appeared for a morning performance chat. No agenda again, just a vague subject and an invite list. I accepted, then added counsel to the thread with 1 line. Attending with representation, I wrote, each word clean and final. Somewhere behind a door, someone started rethinking tomorrow. The performance meeting opened, and I counted 3 chairs too many. My attorney set her folder down and met their eyes. He cleared his throat and reached for a printed agenda. I slid a recorder between us and let the red light blink. HR nodded once, then asked if I felt supported now. I want criteria before any assessment, I answered without blinking. List them, weight them, and tie them to outcomes. He shifted, then started praising team spirit in vague phrases. My lawyer leaned forward and tapped the invite header twice. "State who requested this," she said, voice even and sharp. "The leadership group," HR offered, gaze dropping to the table. "Name the group," my lawyer replied, pen ready for the list. Silence stretched until the clock ticked inside my ribs. They produced 4 names and a title no one explained. I wrote each down, then underlined the last one hard. He launched a slide with new targets no one recognized. Numbers appeared that didn't match our signed plan. "Baseline these with previous quarters," I said, hand steady over notes. The slide changed to something safer and dull. My lawyer smiled like a door just opened. "We requested access logs for the project workspace." It joined by phone and sounded careful with every word. 2 admin edits late night from an executive alias came through. I watched HR's knuckles tighten around a capped pen. "Preserve the entire session," my lawyer added, not asking at all. He tried to pivot toward professional tone and team cohesion. I asked for the phrase choice that triggered my removal. HR inhaled, then glanced at him for a rescue line. He offered a polished sentence about market expectations and image. "Image of what?" I asked, and the room thinned. A knock interrupted, and Mark stepped in looking tired. He held a printed call schedule and didn't sit. "They want me leading tomorrow's pitch without her," he read. My attorney took the sheet and photographed it cleanly. The executive names on the footer matched our list. "Who decided this reroute?" I asked, keeping my voice level. Mark swallowed and glanced toward the door as if expecting backup. He nodded toward the agenda on the table without looking. I thanked him and dismissed him with a short wave. He left fast, which told me he chose a side. HR proposed a mentoring package with checkpoints and quiet improvements. I counted the ways that offer dodged accountability. "Declined," I said, and placed my written request forward. It demanded reinstatement, damages, and an external monitor. He exhaled hard through his nose like a stalled engine. "We can continue internally," HR tried, palms slightly lifted. "No," my lawyer said, tapping the recorder with one finger. "The evidence shows exclusion based on prohibited grounds." I watched his gaze flick to the glass wall. People paused outside to read the tension on our faces. The meeting adjourned with a promise to circle back quickly. We stayed seated as they filed out in tight formation. My lawyer turned to me and pointed at my notes. "You stayed precise under pressure," she whispered, almost approving. I felt the fear ease, but only a notch. Back at my desk, calendar updates rained like hail. Invites removed me from 3 client rooms without explanation. I declined the silence by replying to all with one line. "Please confirm lawful grounds for alteration," I wrote, then hit send. My phone buzzed with a blocked number before the echo faded. "Take a walk," the voice urged, clipped and urgent. I stepped into the stairwell and kept moving down. "The board packet includes gendered remarks under risk," the voice continued. "Check the draft directory today or it vanishes." The call ended and the dial tone felt like a dare. I reached legal's shared drive with my heart stuttering once. A draft packet sat in a mislabeled folder with yesterday's date. Inside, a bullet referenced executive optics during client dinners. Another line mentioned acceptable presence for high-touch accounts. I copied the file twice and emailed hashes to counsel. Security pinged me to confirm my location within the building. I replied with floor and room and stayed put. 2 managers walked by and pretended not to see me. I noted the time and the route they avoided. My inbox chimed again with a formal retaliation notice request. By late afternoon, my badge access failed at 2 doors. I documented each denial with timestamps and witnesses. An IT analyst appeared with a temporary card and careful eyes. "Systems are under review," he murmured while handing it over. He didn't meet my gaze, which meant he understood plenty. The day closed with an emergency invite from the top. Short notice, neutral subject, no agenda again. I forwarded it to counsel and added 3 questions. Who initiated what authority, what remedial steps expected. Then I packed my recorder and felt the shift begin. I took the front chair before anyone else entered. The door opened and 3 executives filed in briskly. General Counsel placed a thin folder and watched my hands. I hit record and folded my arms once. No one smiled, which meant the stakes just rose. We called this to reset direction. I slid a printout from the draft packet across. A bullet-read mail laid for high-exposure dinners. Another noted acceptable demeanor for client reassurance. Their eyes tightened, which told me they recognized the page. Who authored that language? General Counsel tapped the table twice and deferred. We workshop materials collectively, his calm voice floated. List the contributors, my attorney replied, pen already poised. Silence dragged, then a name surfaced like a bad secret. He spoke next with polished smoothness that felt practiced. We want to offer a transition with enhanced scope. Scope without title, I asked, leaning forward just enough. He paused a beat and tried a different lane. A transitional stipend and a leadership mentor, came the pivot. Declined. I pushed a prepared letter toward the center. It demanded reinstatement, back pay, and external oversight. It also requested a litigation hold across 12 accounts. Counsel read it twice, then set it down carefully. The top executive clasped his hands and tried warmth. We all value your impact. Then restore authority by noon and confirm in writing. My attorney placed a small clock on the table. Its second hand ticked loud enough to cut breath. They broke for 10 minutes and used 8. When they returned, HR carried a new offer. Temporary co-lead with Mark for 90 days. I let the quiet stretch until the air bristled. Noted for the file, I said, and didn't touch it. Meeting adjourned with vague promises and tight faces. I stepped into the hall and texted my lawyer. Proceed with agency filing today, I wrote, thumb steady. She replied with a single checkmark and a time. We were done negotiating without leverage. Back at my desk, a calendar nudge tried to park me. It assigned me to internal notes during tomorrow's pitch. I replied all with one line that carried weight. Please state lawful basis for role change by deadline. 3 minutes later, the invite vanished without comment. Security appeared near my row with careful posture. Badge audit, the guard murmured, eyes on a tablet. I scanned the temp card and waited for the beep. The device flashed green and then flickered red. I logged time, location, and the exact error code. Mark approached after they left and hovered. I recorded last night's prep call, he whispered, jaw tight. He pressed play and stepped back like it burned. On the audio, my manager allocated me to smiles and notes. Send that to counsel, I said, pulse steady and sharp. An email from a personal account hit next. I was in the room, the subject line read. Inside, a short statement described a directive to choose a man. It included dates, a meeting name, and 2 witnesses. I forwarded it to my attorney and requested affidavits. It pinged my chat with a terse update. We recovered 2 deleted permissions tied to exec credentials. They attached a snapshot of the access trail. I thanked them and asked for chain of custody. Locked and logged came back instantly, which mattered a lot. Afternoon brought a company-wide message about inclusive culture. Pledges filled 3 paragraphs with airy language. I replied privately to HR with a short request. Please disclose training vendor and schedule preservation. No response landed, which told me they were scrambling. The agency portal opened on my screen like a door. I entered dates, quotes, and file names with careful precision. I uploaded the audio in the draft packet excerpt. I checked a box for retaliation observed today. Submission confirmed with a reference number that I memorized. Near 5, my manager tried a casual stop at my desk. Let's reset and find common ground. I stood and held his gaze until he blinked. Ground his policies followed and decisions reversed. His jaw worked, then he gave a thin nod and retreated. 5:30, my lawyer called with crisp instructions. We're sending preservation notices to the board tonight. Expect pushback and maybe a sudden performance memo. I looked at my inbox and saw a new draft forming. Let them send it, I said, already opening a folder. Before leaving, I dropped a sealed envelope with reception. Inside, a timeline and an inventory of evidence. A note on top named the person to call if I disappeared. It felt dramatic and yet smart insurance. Paranoia and prudence sometimes hold hands when power plays start. I stepped into the elevator and exhaled once. My reflection looked focused and strangely calmer. I wasn't waiting for permission anymore, not from anyone. Tomorrow would be louder and less polite. I wanted it loud because silence had protected them long enough. I walked into the pitch room and sat at the head. He hovered near the wall and pretended that was normal. Roles as previously assigned, I announced to the team. Mark opened his laptop and didn't meet anyone's eyes. My manager clenched his jaw and reached for the mute button. Quick alignment, he started, palms open like nothing was burning. We'll keep Sarah on notes to streamline messaging. I slid a copy of the agency receipt across the table. Filed, I said, and tapped the reference number twice. Silence dropped hard enough to rattle the meeting nerves. HR rushed in with a tidy folder and a practiced smile. Let's postpone this client touchpoint for internal calibration. Client waits 5 minutes, I told the room evenly. We confirm titles now or we walk from the deal. Mark looked up because that threat was not theater. The executive dialed in with a smooth greeting that slipped. Is there a disruption on your side? Yes, I answered, eyes on the camera. Leadership applied gendered criteria to leadership selection. The call froze for a beat while my heart sprinted. We weren't alone on that line anymore, I felt it. Someone senior joined without introduction and stayed silent. Proceed with original structure, the voice finally cut in. We will debrief after revenue matters. My manager swallowed and shifted 2 inches back. We closed the pitch on momentum and clean facts. When the client disconnected, HR leaned forward quickly. Please return your phone for a compliance review. Preservation holds are active, I replied, voice steady and cold. Anything else would be spoliation, and you know it. Security appeared 2 minutes later with careful posture. Standard device check during investigations, the guard murmured. My counsel is en route, I answered without breaking eye contact. Nothing leaves my custody before her arrival. The guard nodded once, then waited at the door. Mark slid a thumb drive toward me with a shaky breath. Listen on headphones only, he whispered, shoulders tight. It was the prep call from last night in full. Use her for warmth, not leadership, a voice instructed. I copied the file, then returned the drive unopened. HR tried a reset meeting with faster cadence and smaller room. Let's find a solution that supports everyone. Here are my terms, I said, laying out 3 lines. Reinstatement immediately, damages calculated by counsel, independent oversight now. Rejecting these extends liability, my lawyer added, stepping into the doorway. They blinked at her arrival like a camera flash. Counsel placed 2 letters on the table with tidy precision. One for the board, one for forensic imaging. You acknowledged receipt when you accepted the meeting, she noted. We will expect compliance within the hour. My manager tried a softer tactic near the hallway corner. We can rebuild trust if you withdraw the filing. I kept my hands still and watched his pupils. You tried to box my role because of gender. He took 1 breath, then looked past me for rescue. An email pinged with a scheduled warning about performance drift. Timestamp 10 minutes after the agency notice left my inbox. My attorney raised an eyebrow and smiled without warmth. Retaliation marked, she said, and forwarded it twice. I felt the floor steady under my shoes. The top executive requested a private audience with limited invitees. We walked in together and faced 3 careful faces. Interim paid leave while we review, came the opening move. For me or for the manager, I asked flatly. Their glances ricocheted between each other like trapped signals. Your presence creates distraction, one of them ventured. My removal rewards discrimination, I countered with calm cadence. Put him on leave and preserve his messages. My lawyer placed a copy of the audio on the table. The second hand of her watch ticked louder than anyone breathed. Counsel requested 1 hour to confer and left quickly. We waited without words and listened to footsteps recede. I thought about fear and how it changes shape. It used to feel like heat, now it felt like steel. Doors opened again and everything in their eyes had shifted. The manager will step back during the review. Your title reverts while the process runs. External investigators begin today, counsel added, voice clipped. I nodded once and held their gaze until it wavered. Put it in writing and include scope, I said. They pushed a draft agreement with a gag clause buried. I circled the line and slid it back without touching it. Remove the muzzle and confirm non-retaliation protections now. Add training with measurable outcomes and public reporting. My lawyer tapped the margin and waited for their pens. We left the room and walked the long corridor. Mark caught up with eyes that looked freshly decided. I'll sign a statement about the directive, he breathed. Names and dates, not impressions, I replied, already composing. He nodded and I felt a quiet hinge turn. Back at my desk, the reinstatement email landed with timestamps. Role restored, budget restored, authority restored pending audit. 2 lines down, a warning forbidding external comments. I forwarded it to counsel and requested revised language. I would not accept power returned with a leash. As I powered down, a message flashed from an unknown account. They're scrubbing a chat channel tonight, the note warned. Ask for backups before midnight or they vanish. I texted my lawyer and dialed it at once. Preservation order expanded and a timer started ticking loudly. I walked into the conference room and placed exhibits in a row. Opposing counsel arrived with 2 associates and a brief nod. My attorney set a timer on her phone without comment. We'll start with custodians and scope, she opened, voice cool and firm. Their lead flipped a pad and asked if we'd entertain resolution today. Depends on terms. He slid a draft with a payout in a hush clause. I read to the end and underlined the gag line. Remove this and add policy reform with audits. His jaw flexed once, which told me they were still testing. Depositions began before lunch and I watched his hands shake. He avoided my eyes and kept rearranging his tie. Who floated the idea to replace her? My lawyer asked. He cleared his throat and named 2 executives by title. Reason, she pressed, and the room went breathless and tight. Client expectations. Clarify expectations, she cut in, pen resting on the page. He reached for water and missed the glass by inches. They want a fatherly presence for high-stakes meetings. The court reporter paused, then continued as my pulse steadied. Mark followed and placed his palm on the table. Did you get direction about who should be out front? He looked toward the door and then faced me. I was told to lead because I present as more reassuring. The word reassuring landed heavy and stayed in the air. Next came HR with a stiff spine and careful answers. Were complaints funneled to leadership without notifying her? Silence, then a measured yes with qualifiers that fell apart. Were documents withheld after a preservation demand? Another pause, then an answer that sounded like surrender. We broke, then reconvened for motions about records. My lawyer requested chat archives and device images. Opposition argued burden and timing with practiced cadence. The judge joined by video and narrowed her gaze. Produce within 7 days, she ordered, and no one breathed. During a recess, the executive sponsor approached the hallway bench. Off the record, we want this behind us. Then fix the system in daylight, I said, hands steady. Name the changes publicly and restore what you stripped. He checked his watch and avoided my eyes like heat. Discovery turned ugly when the exports landed that night. Threads showed managers rating pitch readiness by gendered shorthand. A calendar note read dinners require paternal anchor for comfort. Another message joked about my supposed temperament under stress. I highlighted each line and felt anger settle into focus. We met early with the judge for a status check. Opposition asked to seal certain files as proprietary material. My lawyer countered that the secrecy masked ban criteria. The judge skimmed, then looked up with visible impatience. Sealing denied, she ruled, and the gallery buzzed softly. Settlement talks restarted with a different posture and fewer smiles. They added reinstatement, back wages, and training language. I crossed out internal-only oversight and wrote independent monitor. Quarterly reports to staff and board, I added clearly. Their lead side then asked for a recess. We refused. Trial prep moved fast and brutal across 2 weeks. I practiced answers until they fit like muscle memory. My voice stopped shaking when I read the quotes aloud. I could feel the version of me before this season. She would have accepted less, but she wasn't driving anymore. Day 1, I took the stand and stared past counsel. Describe the moment your promotion was taken, the question came. I kept it clean and factual with dates and proof. I described the language used to justify my removal. Jurors shifted as the pattern drew itself in ink. Cross tried to paint me as difficult and disruptive. Did you ever raise your tone in a meeting? I insisted on written standards when mine were pulled. Did you refuse mentoring? I refused window dressing in place of authority, I answered evenly. Mark testified next and didn't flinch this time. He read from his notes with crisp precision. He admitted he benefited from a decision he didn't make. He confirmed the directive to keep me present yet sidelined. He looked at me afterward, apology clear and complete. My manager faced the screen with a smaller voice. He tried to label it a misunderstanding of client needs. My lawyer played the audio where I was assigned warmth. Jurors glanced at each other and then back to him. His collar wilted while the transcript kept rolling. Before closings, they tried one last proposal in a hallway huddle. More money, softer reporting, and a narrow apology. No, I said, and felt fear finally step back. Admit the rule was illegal and promise visible change. Otherwise, we finish this in public, my lawyer added. Closing arguments landed clean like final notes. Ours mapped the chain from motive to action. Theirs warned about reputational harm and budget strain. The judge dismissed the panel to deliberate in silence. I folded my hands and watched the clock crawl. The verdict came fast and louder than I expected. Liability found on discrimination and retaliation counts. Damages awarded with a line item for deterrence. Relief ordered to include training with measurable goals. I exhaled, then inhaled, and felt the room regain gravity. Afterward, counsel approached again with new faces and humbler tone. We want to implement the reforms immediately. Start with reinstatement and public acknowledgement, I answered calmly. Then meet the monitor and publish the first report. They nodded and I felt the ground shift under them. The company memo went out by afternoon with my title restored. It listed corrective steps and dates for follow-through. It named the investigator and the oversight timeline. It also placed my manager on administrative leave. People forwarded it to me with quiet fist emojis. I walked past his office and the door stayed closed. Inside, a box wait. D for items that used to define him. I didn't gloat, though a part of me wanted to. I thought about every woman who sits through polite theft. I wanted the system to remember this sting longer than I would. When the building emptied, I stood by the window and listened. Not for apologies, not for cheers, just for my own breath. I had been steady for months, and it finally held. Fear loosened its grip and made space for something tougher. I wasn't just back, I was setting the rules now.